It's so obvious it almost goes without saying, knowing about a person is not the same as knowing the person. You may know your friend's height, weight, social security number, hair color, but who in their right mind would say that if you knew all these things about your friend, that it would somehow demonstrate that you really know them as a person? Likewise, many Christians so-called have a knowledge about God. They can quote the words of Jesus and the apostles and win at Bible trivia. They can quote John 3:16, Acts 2:38, and Romans 1:17, so they're bound for glory. No one should dare think that this kind of knowledge, even when it's extensive, can substitute for the knowledge of God as a person. So if you want to be able to say that you know a person, what would you need to know? In a child's terms, you would want to know what makes them happy and sad and angry. You would want to know their interests and their pursuits. Jeremiah prophesied of a time coming when God's people would no longer be in need of someone to teach them to know the Lord. He said, "And no longer shall each one teach his neighbor and each his brother, saying, 'Know the Lord,' for they shall all know me, from the least of them to the greatest, declares the Lord. For I will forgive their iniquity, and I will remember their sin no more." The book of Hebrews in chapter 8 declares that this is the new covenant that replaced the old. That means, if you're a Christian, you do not need to be taught to know God, you already know Him. Of course, this doesn't mean that you know about Him. It means that whether you're great or small, you know Him as a person. This is just a basic difference between the Old Covenant and the New. Under the Old Covenant, it was possible for a person to be born a Jew and live a Jew their entire life, knowing volumes about the law of Moses, but not knowing the person of God nor having a relationship with Him. By contrast, the basic requirement to be a Christian is not to be born into a Christian family, but to have a basic understanding that the sovereign God loves and forgives those who come to Him on His terms. Let's take some time to reflect on our own intimacy with God. Let's remind ourselves of the things we know: His loves, His hates, His interests, and His pursuits, and rededicate ourselves to letting Him be our God and being His people. Let us pursue His interests and love the things that He loves. Now here are some thought questions for your own consideration. What are some of God's top interests that are also yours? As a hint, think of Micah chapter 6 and verse 8, or James 1:27. Second, what items are on God's agenda that may conflict with yours, and in what way are you putting His ahead of yours? Third, what are some things that God hates? As a hint, see Proverbs chapter 6, verses 16 through 19. And how can we magnify our own hatred for the same things?